We have avoided coming to Highclere Castle for all these years because it just seemed like a possibly overcrowded and overpriced manor house to visit. But I always knew that one day we would have American friends come visit who were desperate to see it. Today is that day. Our friends Keith and Kelly from Texas came to stay with us. You might recognize them from our Marmite tasting video or our cheese and pickle tasting video, which I filmed here at Highclere next to the car park. I'll link to both of those videos in the description. Kelly is a huge Downton Abbey fan, so it was her #1 priority on her first visit to England to see Highclere Castle. So we made the trek from Gloucestershire. I have to confess, I was excited to see the castle as it came into view on the long drive up to the entrance. Speaking of the long drive, we kept speculating on this long approach to the castle, which dangerous curve was the one where Matthew had his fatal car crash right after Lady Mary gave birth to their son. We arrived at Highclere Castle at the earliest entry time by 10 a.m., but not much later the tour buses started arriving and the crowd started piling up and the queue got much longer. Highclere Castle is a wonderful place to visit in its own right because of the long history of this building and the beautiful grounds, which were designed by famous landscape artist Capability Brown. I have visited lots of beautiful manor houses with amazing gardens that were designed by Capability Brown, but this is the first time I've actually seen a statue of him here on the grounds of Highclere Castle by Lady Edith's bench. I'm here at Highclere Castle today, and let's talk about it. Let's talk about the fact that going to visit a historic, beautiful British building like this, it's a bit of a mixed bag. Many of these locations are important historically, architecturally, and in a way culturally, or that's how they're popular anyway. They are popularized by the films and TV shows that were filmed at these locations. For example, going to Gloucester Cathedral. Are you going there because King Edward II is buried there? Or because Harry Potter's Hogwarts hallways were filmed in the cloisters? And Bamborough Castle. Are you going there because Indiana Jones was filmed there? Or because it's 1,000 years old and it played a key part in the War of the Roses? How about Blenheim Palace? Are you going there because Churchill lived there and it's the largest non-royal palace in England? Or are you going there because Gulliver's Travels was filmed there? Or how about Alnwick Castle? Are you going there because it's the second largest inhabited castle in all of Britain? Or are you going there because the Percy family of Northumberland, one of the largest landowners and oldest families in Britain, still lives there? Or are you going there because it was the filming location of the Quidditch scenes in Harry Potter? So let's talk about the history of Highclere Castle. Back in 749, the estate was granted to the bishops of Winchester by an Anglo-Saxon king. Then in 1679, this former medieval palace was rebuilt as a private home and manor house. Later, it became a classical mansion in the Greek Revival style. And then in 1842, it was rebuilt by Sir Charles Barry in the Jacobean style for the 3rd Earl of Pembroke. During recent generations, it has been owned by the Earls of Carnarvon. Earl of Pembroke, Earl of Carnarvon, these sound like very Welsh names. There are a few things that Highclere Castle has in common with Downton Abbey and the story that we know. For example, like Downton Abbey, Highclere Castle was used as a hospital for soldiers in World War I. And during World War II, it was a home for evacuated children who were getting out of London to avoid the bombing. Highclere was also owned by an earl who married an American heiress, just like in Downton Abbey. And today, with 300 rooms, it's one of the largest stately homes in England, and certainly a very popular tourist destination. This is the outdoor dining area of the first tea shop you encounter, although I just saw a poor woman who had her scone and cream and jam, and she was trying to spread the jam on her scone, and like 8 wasps or bees or whatever they are just descended all at once right around her food and wouldn't leave her alone, so she had to scurry back inside. So that's the one danger of eating in the garden. Apparently, the Highclere Castle team are trying to encourage the bees to leave the diners alone by having this trap. Seems to be working pretty well, but there's still a lot of bees out here. Look here at the member of staff spraying insect repellent all around the bin area, whilst trying to avoid customers. And look, he's got a tennis racket to whack away the bees because they're just trying to change the bin bags. But the bees are so bad, they have to use those rippers and a tennis racket to try and clean things up without getting stung. Oh my goodness, bless them. That is just ridiculous. Up there you can see the beautiful original part of the house and the facade. And then here on the back, where the servants lived and where the kitchen deliveries come, it's much lower quality building materials and less fancy design. Here in this marquee is another tea shop. Lots of people come to Downton Abbey and want to have tea. This is the coach house and the former stables, and the afternoon tea is served in here. We're approaching the gift shop. Here is a hat stand, and I think Ian needs to buy this hat. I think that's a man's hat in a tasteful color of magenta. Here next to the pink flowers is a cute wee little hedgehog. They do have some nice magenta handbags. The gift shop also has cute monkeys and dogs, but of course the magenta wraps or pashminas or whatever they are caught my eye. I'll give a look at some of the Downton Abbey and Highclere Castle mementos available for sale, since I know that is of interest to Downton fans who may wish to plan a visit here. Of course, I considered buying a Highclere Castle Christmas ornament for my annual Dara and Ian ornament, but I'm really only supposed to buy one per year, and I already bought 4 the month before at Hever and Leeds Castles. I'm not planning on visiting Highclere Castle again, so I did feel the need to buy some overpriced items at the gift shop for a few of my Downton Abbey crazed friends who would be visiting me the next summer. I figured that bribing them with a really beautiful tea towel might be helpful in getting them to agree not to make us come back here again. I thought that was a worthwhile investment. And here is what I bought for myself: a t-shirt with my favorite Dowager Countess quote. Some of the items on offer here in this gift shop were a bit odd. For example, what the heck is aristocratic milk chocolate? Now, that's just silly. Oh, and look, they have Highclere Castle fruitcake. If you are a fruitcake fan, make sure you check out the fruitcake video I filmed last Christmas if you missed it. I will link that in the description as well. And now we're going to sit on the couch and give you our post-visit review of the experience. So Keith and Kelly, they just came to England for the first time ever. This was the first manor house they'd visited, and they're big Downton Abbey fans, so we're gonna hear their first impressions, and then Ian and I, who are the manor house veterans, also Downton Abbey fans, but have been to dozens of manor houses, are gonna give you our thoughts. So, Keith and Kelly.
I thought it was great that the tickets were pre-purchased because that fast-tracked us getting in. And I noticed they were a little cheaper that way as well, which was good. But it was amazing just pulling up after being a fan of the show and just seeing it in person was really cool. I loved the exterior and the gardens. Those were my favorite parts. The interior, the best thing about the interior for me, I liked seeing the stills from the show in each room, so you could see that, wow, this is exactly how it was in the show. I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, pulling up, I wanted to have the theme song on. I wanted to see Mr. Bates and all the servants lined up to greet me. We didn't quite have that, but we got in a timely fashion. There were people already lined up, and I think we were one of the first tours.
Right.
But just pulling up, just the grandeur of it. It really is out in the middle of nowhere. and you just see this big, grand Downton Abbey right there. It was a little disappointing that we didn't get to go downstairs and see where the servants lived, where the kitchen was, where so much of the action took place. But like Keith said, the rooms that they did use to film, that was really fun to see the stills from the show and the movie up there.
Since I wasn't able to film inside, let's talk about what those rooms were. So there was the library, was the biggest one. And then the staircase leading into the saloon, that main area.
The dining room.
Yeah, and the dining room. Those are
and
the
then
areas.
a couple of bedrooms. Lady Mary's bedroom, I
Lady
think.
Sybil and
Lady
Lady
Sybil.
Edith.
Lady Edith. The bedrooms were a little disappointing. They looked way bigger, but that's the miracle of television, friends. Actually, everything looks bigger on TV. It really, the size of the castle was huge, but the rooms were not as big. Like the foyer, or where they had like the party before, where they invited the townspeople. I think it was a Christmas episode or some kind of reception. On TV, it looked like a ballroom, looked huge, or the size of a banquet hall, and that was really quite small. The hosts that were there, or the workers, or whatever you want to call them, they were pretty knowledgeable. They weren't just taking you around privately or giving you information. You kind of had to ask them. There was a printed card in each room that kind of gave some of the highlights, like this is a desk that was Napoleon's.
Right. But there were only just a couple facts
Yes.
in each room. What did you think, Ian?
I thought it was okay. But compared to some of the best places we've been to, it just wasn't there. Arundel Castle, I think, is my top spot now of places to go to.
Favorite castle ever.
The gardens in Arundel are just out of this world beautiful.
So the problem is, Ian and I just went to Kent for our anniversary trip for a couple weeks and saw all the most amazing castles. So that's a little bit of an unfair comparison for us, because we went to Leeds, Hever, Herstmonceux, Bodiam Castle. We just went to all these amazing castles. And also we've been to Blenheim Palace, we've been to Flores Castle.
Chatsworth, we've been to Chatsworth 3 times. Chatsworth is one of the absolute tops.
Right.
So
just
when it comes
phenomenal palaces inside.
When it comes to your average home manor house here in Britain, yeah, that's an impressive place. But when it comes to a place that's super popular and just tons and tons of people go, Chatsworth is way better.
I feel like, again, having been to so many manor houses and castles, and the ones that do it well, they have a little film strip or film video that you watch before you go tour that tells you a little background, history, context. I think that would have been great for this, so that you could understand. We went through that whole thing, and I don't know who the Earls of Carnarvon are. I don't know how long they've been living there. I don't know which Earl is there now. There was a person working in each room, and if, like Kelly was saying, if you went up to them and asked them questions, they would answer them. But they weren't saying, what's cool about this room is blah, 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 blah.
They didn't have a set speech or talking points.
So I just overheard during someone else's conversation them saying something about how the 6th Earl of Carnarvon, he married an American heiress, which of course is similar to Downton Abbey. That would have been super interesting to know. That should be something that there's a sign or a plaque or a brochure or a film or something that tells you interesting things about the earls who have lived there, the family who's lived there for hundreds of years. So it is a separate ticket to go to the Egyptian exhibition. So if you want to know about the earl who, found King Tut's tomb and all that Egyptology stuff, you have to buy a whole separate thing to go there. And for us who just went through the normal house tour, there was not a word about that. So we don't know anything about it. So I think they just could have shared a little bit more history. I personally, as the YouTube creator, was annoyed that there was no filming or photography allowed at all. And we do hear that frequently when we go to these manor homes where the family's still living in part of it. But I also think that's a little bit bogus, because we've been to some places where the family's still living there and they do let you film, like Blenheim, a huge opulent palace. Over 1,000 people were there today. It's so busy, but the one good thing, like Keith was saying, is that they they
Staggered.
right, they schedule it so that only 25 people go in at a time, or 10 people, or whatever it is, in one little tour chunk. But then you all come within this 2-hour window. They don't let you just come up at any time. You have to have a scheduled time, and then you go in small groups into the house at once. So you're not going into a room where there's 50 people crammed in there, you can't see anything. They do manage the crowds, but you know, especially when you're wandering around the garden and just in the lawns, trying to get a picture in front of the castle without 18 people behind it. There are a ton of people there. Net, if you are a huge Downton Abbey fan, go see Highclere Castle. But then also go see some of the other amazing castles and palaces in England so that you can see some other great buildings with enormous history and architectural beauty as well. I hope you enjoyed our visit to Highclere Castle, aka Downton Abbey, today. If you'd like to see some of our other favorite manor houses and palaces and castles, check out these videos. Thank you so much for watching, and do something good in the world today.